Hi, Dee Nova with Nova Consulting. Let's take a few minutes to hear more about you and your business and what you do.
Absolutely. Hi, Nicole. Thank you. Again, Dee Nova, I have a coaching and consulting business. So on the B2B end, I work with businesses to work on any organizational development consulting work that they need. So things like designing new hire onboarding, working with leaders on their own leadership development, any process improvement work. That's kind of the work that I reserve for B2B work. And then on the B2C end, I function more as a coach for either existing leaders or aspiring leaders and helping them develop their own leadership skills. So providing group coaching and one-on-one coaching as well.
Wow, it sounds like you do a lot.
It sounds like a lot, but it all connects. So it doesn't really feel that very different for me. I can easily float from one space to the other just because it's all really connected. I'm super passionate about, helping people bring out their best versions, professionally and otherwise, right? And also get results. I'm huge on the results end of coaching and consulting. Obviously, with consulting, you're held to a higher standard by corporations. But even with like one-on-one coaching, I honestly believe that as coaches, getting our coachees results that are tangible, that so they can actually feel a sense of accomplishment is super important.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
100%. So obviously, with your experience, there's some corporate experience in there
Mhm.
to get you to, be able to work with, what you do.
Yeah.
Can you go more into your history, what you've done, some projects that are notable?
Oh, for sure. So I started my career in corporate in the US, at least, in working in call centers, right? I'm originally from South Africa. I moved out here in my early 20s, went to school upstate New York, and while I was there, had a call center job because it was easy to do and make money while I went to school. So I started out in a call center agent, and from there, kind of like every 2 years, I was getting a promotion, which is very interesting. So the leadership end of me has always been there. That element of just how I show up, that's always been there. I also majored in organizational behavior at school. Organizational behavior, with a concentration on leadership and change management. So that's what I did at school. And then on the work end, I have always been the person that loves to help people. So anytime we have new hires, yeah, let's bring you into the fold culture wise. Let me teach you how to do the thing that you're doing. And that led to opportunities being presented to me that I was able to take advantage of. So from being an agent, I was a team lead. And while I was a team lead, I helped with the company I was at that time. So with the company I was with at that time, I helped us set up a call center out in Ohio, and that put me on the radar for bigger projects.
Mm-hmm.
So towards me graduating from grad school, um, there was an opening in the company for a coaching and development supervisor. And to be honest, I was not going to apply for the job.
Mm.
I had no interest in doing it because in my mind, I was going to be a consultant for one of the big four consulting companies, and life was going to be great. But the opportunity came up, and a former supervisor actually reached out to me, and she was like, "Hey, put your name in this hat for this role. I know you'd be really good at it." And she turned out to be right. Thank you, Jen. I appreciate you seeing that in me. Um,
Shout out to Jen.
Shout out, Jen. You know, so I put my name in the hat. I got the job, and that was the beginning of my professional career, lining up with my academics as well, and me just being able to use what I've learned and all the things that I'm passionate about, as far as like helping people and seeing people and coaching and training. So I was able to do that with Claire. The company's name was Claire Result, and I was with them for a couple of years, several years actually, and then I COVID happened. Things kind of slowed down for a bit. With the year that COVID happened, I ended up at PayPal. And with PayPal, I was a leadership and performance improvement coach. I was on the global team for leadership and performance improvement, and loved it. Loved it. Absolutely loved it. I think one of my favorite projects that I've worked on to date was last year. I acquired a corporate client that needed help with getting their team to meet their stats. So this was my first official corporate client as an entrepreneur, right? Because up until then, I had been an in-house consultant and coach. I'd never actually had someone say, "Hey, I'm going to hire you to do this." And while that process of working with that company was beautiful for so many reasons, because not only was I able to give them the results that they wanted, I did such a good job that they offered me a permanent role. And unfortunately, then that team was hit by layoffs again in September of last year. So yeah,
Mhm.
last year was crazy,
Yeah,
to say the least. But yeah, I've accomplished a lot as far as coaching and development projects, and they bring me joy because I honestly believe that corporations' biggest assets are their people. And if you take care of your people, the numbers take care of themselves. So if I'm able to come in and help you find ways to take care of your people, develop your people, support your people, see your people, I'm helping. And that's important to me.
that's great. So you mentioned wanting to work for the four big consulting firms,
Yeah.
and now you're an entrepreneur, blazing your own way. Can you talk about that transition and what made you want to become an entrepreneur in the first place?
I think that's a loaded question. That was a good one, Nicole. Didn't see that one coming. I'm like, well, how honest are we gonna get? Very.
Very
Uh,
honest, please.
so over the years working in corporate, the stability can create a sense of comfort that almost makes us complacent, right? And you tolerate things that you typically shouldn't tolerate. So prior to 2020 happening, that previous year, I had experienced a lot of workplace trauma and burnout, right? Where I was being overworked, underpaid, and also just ill treated at work. And it took me some time, like between February of 2020 and August of 2020, I really just spent a lot of time working on that because I did not trust the corporate space at all. And so that was the reason back then. And now it's from observation and conversations that still hasn't changed much, right? And I think sometimes, especially when you're a consultant, and I can say this for the company that I was working with last year, when you're a consultant, it doesn't really impact you that much because you get in and you get out.
Right.
But when you are someone that has to exist in that environment and you want to grow in that environment, a lot of companies aren't developing their managers to become good people managers or leaders. So that causes a lot of harm in how people are spoken to, how people are treated, and how work is even distributed within teams. So corporate for me, I would love to go back to corporate, but it has to be for the right company. You and I were just talking about that earlier, right? It has to be for the right company because my mental health is not worth a paycheck.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's a sacrifice. That's a trade-off I'm not willing to make. I made that mistake before and I swore to myself that I'd never do that again. If my mental health is going to be the sacrifice I make to get a check every 2 weeks or every month, that's not a fair trade-off to me. So I'm very much in a place where I would love to help corporations create environments where people actually want to come and work because people do want to work. We need money. You know what I mean? Like you need money to pay for things like housing, cars, food, the necessities of life. You need an
Mm-hmm.
income for that, right? So why not create corporations that have cultures that are not harmful to the very people that need to show up because you need them to show up too as a company. If you don't have people working for you, you don't really have a company anymore,
Right.
right? So why not treat the people that you are inviting into your space like you actually value them
Mm-hmm.
and do your best to help them stay? Because another thing too is high turnover costs companies thousands, almost millions of dollars every year,
Mm-hmm.
right? So if you have people leaving because you have a toxic work environment, why put it on the employees instead of turning that mirror inwards and saying, hey, what is it that we're doing that we can't hold on to people?
Exactly. So you're
Yeah.
you're telling me that pizza doesn't solve all the problems?
Absolutely not. Oh my God. Pizza is not going to fix your toxic work environment. I swear. Pizza Fridays to me in my mind is the equivalent of Marie Antoinette saying, let them eat cake. Like, don't do that. Nobody needs that.
I
Keep
love
your
it.
pizza. Just treat your people well
Right. No.
and give them pizza.
And give them
Because I
pizza.
mean, pizza's pretty awesome.
Yeah, no, amazing. I love it. So, obviously we're talking about work environment and that whole bit, for corporations. If you were to, kind of blatantly make a statement of, two or three things that you think that corporations should start to increase the workers, mental health and happiness, and the lack of turnover and all of those things, if you were to be a bug in their ear, what are some ideas that you could potentially throw out?
Leverage technology to make your people's productivity better and faster, right? And more predictable, because human error does cost companies a lot of money, right? So leverage technology to do that. But don't leverage technology to the point where you are understaffed and then lay all that labor onto the people that you do have. Right? There's a happy medium here that a lot of companies tend to not necessarily consider when they're making these decisions.
Mm-hmm.
Talk to your people.
Wait, talk to your people?
Yeah, it sounds wild, right? Because it's not like there's a whole company that bases their entire existence on getting employee feedback. Gallup, you know what I mean? Like,
Right.
talk to your people. I will never understand a people leader that only talks to their people when something is wrong and when it's time for reviews. Who are you giving a review? You don't know these people.
Right.
What are you basing your review on? Just numbers? Numbers are great for information. Numbers provide great data, but without context, it is very easy to make flawed decisions that actually end up hurting you and your team in the long run. So if you don't know your people, like, I can't fully tell your story as a person, as an employee, about your productivity if I'm only looking at numbers. And if the only time you as an employee talk to me as a manager is when something is wrong, you're not going to enjoy those conversations.
Mm-mm.
And if you're not enjoying our conversations, how much development am I actually putting in you? How am I developing you as a person? How am I making sure that, I'm playing up your strengths in the projects that I put on your lap? You know what I mean? And also, if I'm only talking to you at the end of the year about your performance, how many missed opportunities have we had between January 1st and next April for you to actually improve on your performance?
Mm-hmm.
This is how people fall in between the cracks, where you have managers that just don't engage with their teams. So please talk to your people. Don't assume they want pizza. Yes, pizza's great. Pizza's great, but if your answer to low productivity, which is normally a sign that something is off, right? Either your processes are off, your systems are off, or your leadership is off. Your employees are not engaging with you. You need to fix that. You need to fix that. And sometimes it's the little things. People want to be seen as human beings at work. I think that's another thing that is often overlooked. People are not widgets.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, they come to work. Yes, they do their job. Yes, you pay them. But
Mm-hmm.
these are entire human beings with stories and lives outside of work that 100% impact how they show up at your job in your office every single day. So if you don't take the time out to at least know a fraction of that, I'm not saying be a therapist to your employees. No one's
Right.
asking you to do that. But if you've worked for me for a year and I don't know that you have children,
That's an issue.
where's the human connection in our conversation?
Right.
Basically, our conversations are very transactional. It's like, hey, you have a job, I'm paying you, do the job.
Mm-hmm.
Fine. That works. That's currently what most of corporate is right now, right?
Yeah.
But how much more productive are people that feel like they are actually seen as human beings at their jobs?
Yeah.
As someone that was once that person in my career, I grew the most when I had leaders that met me as a person versus my title.
Right.
And that makes a huge difference. I think I may have given you three or maybe more. I don't know. Were we counting?
Beautiful. Nope. I love it. I love it. The more suggestions and ideas, the better.
Yeah.
So, obviously you're looking to work with corporations and businesses to increase a number of different measures and, KPIs and, that whole bit. So, for a potential CEO that's considering your services, what are some of those KPIs that you could help with to get them to be, have an idea if they could work with you or not?
Oh, for sure. One, numbers matter a lot in decision making,
Mm-hmm.
right? So if you are looking specifically at employee engagement, I think a good indicator would be like ENPS, which is your employee net promoter score. Your ENPS score is basically, out of 10, what is the likelihood of someone that works for you recommending someone else to come and work for you, that referral thing? And I know right now referrals tend to be more monetary based. It's like people will make referrals because they're going to get a referral bonus,
Right.
right? But do people actually want to work for you? And I mentioned Gallup a lot. They should probably just pay me at this point. Um, but every year, bigger companies will put out a Gallup survey for their employees to give them feedback. Use that data to inform you of any employee related initiatives for the following year. So if you realize that people are saying, there is no room for growth, okay, is is that aligned? If there's a misalignment where your people are saying there's no room for growth, but you as a CEO believe that there is, there's a gap there.
Right.
What is that gap? I can help you figure it out. Um, if you are having a performance issue where, like the example that I gave you earlier on, where you have a team that's working but they're not hitting their numbers, again, there's a gap. What is that gap? So doing gap analyses and process design and improvement, I can help in that arena as well. If you are spending thousands upon thousands of dollars in training, but the information is just not being retained or even implemented, 9 out of 10 is because it's a one and done deal. Okay, I'll even ask you, how many times when you were working in corporate did you take an HR course?
Once a year.
Okay. How much of that course did you remember later that afternoon?
20%.
How much of it did you remember 6 months from that day?
Probably 5%.
Exactly. The reason we know why, and like there's been research done behind this, right? So you can spend all this money on training, but if you don't find a way to bake in the information that you're putting people training through for
Hmm.
into their everyday, they're gonna forget. Like our brains are very limited and very picky about what they choose to hold on to.
Hmm.
If your brain isn't constantly reminded that this is something that matters, it chucks it in the archive
Right.
until something triggers it,
Hmm.
right? But for things like, I don't know, like how to a certain process that somebody has to follow. I can't tell you how many times I've watched companies and managers train people and not give them any coaching
Hmm.
to reinforce that learning. If you don't reinforce the learning, they're going to forget. So,
Yep.
how do you set up an effective coaching program for your leaders to be able to reinforce the learning with their people? And it also helps with baking in corporate culture as well. I think that's another thing that people feel like it's automatic. Corporate culture doesn't just happen.
Right.
It's not like you just show up, oh, this culture, here it is.
Yeah.
No, your values, nice. It's you should have those.
Hmm.
But how are you reinforcing those values every day and how your people interact with each other, with your customers? These are things that we have to be more intentional about to see the value in them. And a lot of times we don't.
Right. So it seems basically if CEOs are not reaching the numbers or and their quotas, having a conversation with you for you to be able to dive in and see what those gaps are, and then coming up with a plan. Is that basically how you work with CEOs? Like how does that process start?
So, reaching out to me, of course, coming in and doing an assessment to see where the gaps are. I don't believe in cookie cutter solutions. That's not how it works, right? Because again, every corporation has a culture.
Hmm.
Whether the culture is intentional or accidental, it has a culture.
Right.
So if I'm going to come into your space and give you solutions on how to fix something, I have to factor in your corporate culture. So having that initial conversation obviously needs to happen, but for me to be effective, I need to spend time with your people and observe, right? And then from that observation, have the conversation with the leader then and say, hey, this is what I'm seeing. These are the potential um, bottlenecks. These are the potential opportunities that you not necessarily potential, but like these are the potential bottlenecks and these are the opportunities that you have. Here are some solutions. What route do you want to go? So very much it's a partnership between the consultant and the corporate leader or whoever their person is that they want to
Hmm.
pair me with. But yeah, that's pretty much how that works. And once we have a solution, we'll then get into the process of you know documenting it, rolling it out, and then making sure that you and your team have, I like to call them triggers. So if you're going to roll out a process, I want to walk away knowing that you know what to look for to know that something is wrong.
That's amazing to make sure that they are on the right track and they can stay on the right track.
Right. So if you see if we roll something out and it's going great, but then something goes off, I want you to be able to identify that, hey, something is off
Hmm.
before it's too late to go back and fix it.
Wow.
And I mean, hopefully nothing is wrong. But again, human behavior, there's always, I have yet to come across a rollout that was perfect, like 100%.
Right.
Let's just be honest about it, right? We shoot for 85 to 95% accuracy, but for those inaccuracies, I want us to have triggers that raise the flag with it, that are built into the system itself to say, hey, we may want to look at this.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
So when you are working on these projects with corporations, how long does your partnership last? Is it something that's kind of, forever? Is it, a couple months? Is it a couple weeks? Like, how do people work with you?
It depends on the project. It depends on the project. If you need me there for a couple of months, I'll be there for a couple of months. If you need me there for a year and some change, I will be there for a year. It just really depends on the project. And obviously, as a business owner, my well, my first priority is solving your problem, right? But the way that, depending on the size of the business as well, a lot of problems are really interconnected. So like, you solve one problem, and then when this problem is solved, you realize, oh no, wait, there's an opportunity here. So building those relationships with the people that I work with is really important. But I also don't want to just stay there because I'm there, because that doesn't help me or you,
Right.
right? So for as long as you need me, you have my support.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
So, we've talked about working with corporations, and I kind of want to take a step over and talk about the individual consulting and working with leaders.
Yeah.
So, can you tell me a little bit about your approach and, kind of your ethos when working on the coaching basis, what you're trying to help these potential leaders and, corporate leaders to develop?
Cool. I strongly believe in leaders that have a people first mentality. If, like I said earlier on, if you take care of your people, the numbers take care of themselves. We've seen it time and time again. So I help leaders define what kind of leader they are, and match that up to the kind of leader that their team needs. And then if there's a gap, as a coach, you're always closing gaps, right? So if
Hmm.
there's a gap, we help close that gap. And through that work, it not only helps the leader develop as an individual and a professional, so professional development is in there as well, but we also get an understanding of, what are your opportunities? Do you need more work on the emotional intelligence side of things? Are you conflict avoidant, and is that hurting your team? So do we need to maybe work on your conflict resolution skills? And those are things that I can work with leaders on. But I think the biggest thing is just self-awareness does such a huge difference for people, regardless of where you are in an organization, right? Whether you're a leader or not, being aware of how your behavior impacts yourself and the people around you is important. And even more so important when you are a people leader, because you're not just impacting one person, you're impacting the team. So if you are able to self reflect and manage and adjust in a way that is beneficial to your team, you will bring out the best in your people, and you will be less stressed.
Hmm.
So understanding that relationship is something that's also just tends to be overlooked by leaders.
Yeah, for
So yeah.
sure. So when it comes to these, coaching opportunities, is this something that's, a couple weeks, a couple months? Is it a year-long program? Is it
Ah,
customized to the person? How does your process work when it comes on the coaching side?
I love that question. So to work with me one on one, you have to go through my 3 week container. Um, and I'm kicking it off in Q3. So I'm getting ready to start it up in July. But the 3 week container is more like a group coaching, where I have no more than 10 leaders from different industries. I think growing and learning in community is also just very important for us as human beings. And in leadership, a lot of times it can get very lonely for people, because you then sit there and think that this is only just happening to you. But something clicks when you realize that, oh no, this is a problem that most leaders have, right? So when you are healing and learning in community, that just makes a difference. So I have a 3 month container for leaders, groups of 10, 2 groups of 10. And we start with, how do you lead yourself? How do you lead the team? Okay, let's implement, right? So that's the process. And that's a 3 month process. The graduates from that 3 month container have the option to work with me one on one. I do not offer one on one right off the bat, because I would like to get to know you. Um, and I think that in that 3 month time when we're all working together, that gives me an opportune time to work, to get to understand people and understand, what makes them tick, what's their drive, what drives them as leaders, what drives them in their career. So yeah, so I offer one-on-one coaching, but it's only open to the people that graduate the 3 month container.
Yeah, I love that. And vetting them and making sure that they're on the same page as you with what you're able to provide. I think is a great way of ensuring that they'll have that value and the experience that you want them to have at the end. I think that's a very innovative way of doing it. I think that's great.
Thank you.
So then, we've kind of talked about the consulting bit. We've talked about the coaching bit.
Mhm.
It seems, that you've been able to marry your education and what you've done and, all of that with your corporate work. What are some, things that you want potential people hearing this that may consider you? What do you want them to know about Dee and about Nova Consulting and your approach?
I practice what I preach. So I'm definitely a people first leader, first and foremost. I honestly believe in the power of human potential. I also I don't separate professional improvement from wellness. So I'm very heavy on wellness. With any coaching client that I have, I want to make sure that you are in the right space to receive coaching. And if you need additional help that's outside of my scope, I'm very happy to refer people to therapists if they don't already have one. I think taking a holistic approach to professional development is something that I I doubt that it's unique to me, but it's a core value of mine, right? Because one, I have been that person. I've been the person that was in corporate that did not get the holistic development and found myself burnt out. So if I can help you and your team avoid burnout, 100%, I am in. What you get from me as a coach is support and accountability, and not accountability in the sense of punishment, which I think sometimes people think of accountability as like, oh, you didn't do this.
Yeah.
That's not, for me, accountability is responsibility, right? If you and I sit down and we come up with a plan for your professional development and we set smart goals, I am going to allow you to own your goals because they are your goals. As a coach, I will never tell you what you need to work on. I will let you tell me what you need to work on, and I will help you come up with a plan to do it. So, in us creating that plan for you, I am now your accountability buddy, meaning that we are now both responsible for these goals being met. And my role is to be your cheerleader and to be a sounding board. Your job is to do the work.
I love it. I think that's a unique approach. I in my experience, many coaches are, at the pulpit for lack of better words and saying do this and do that and
God,
do this. So I love the approach that it's more of a collaboration and partnership.
yeah.
And that I think that that's a breath of fresh air when it comes to coaches and consultants, at large.
Oh, for sure. And it's also a pet peeve of mine, to be honest, because I think a lot of coaches that you see out there are more mentors than coaches, and there's a difference, right? A mentor is someone that has walked this path. They know all the landmines and will tell you what to watch out for. So they just give you the roadmap and you follow the roadmap.
Mhm.
And then you come back to them if you want expert advice. That's a great mentor. As coaches, our job literally is to be bridge builders between where the person is and where they want to go. I don't know where you want to go. You're the person that knows best where to go. I can help you figure out where you want to go, but I can't tell you where you want to go. You may have an idea of where you want to go, and then in subsequent conversations, of course, as a professional, I'll pick up on little cues and be like, "Hey, have you considered this?" I can make suggestions. I can ask questions, but any coaching session, and this is rich coming from someone that's been talking so much on this podcast, but any coaching session needs to be like a good 70-30 split of your coach listening versus talking,
Mhm.
right? So they spend 60 to 70% of the time just listening to you because that is your coaching session.
Right.
And then they spend the rest of the time then guiding with questions. The best coaches that I've ever come across are very good at asking questions. So if you find yourself in a coaching situation where you are listening more than talking, that is no longer a coaching session. If you find yourself in a coaching conversation where you walk away without a clear goal or how to even work towards that goal, that was not a coaching conversation.
Yeah, I think that's great. So I know that we're located here in the greater Phoenix Valley.
Mhm.
Are you able to provide your services remotely,
Yeah.
via those, tools? Are you looking for people here just in the valley? What's your approach to that?
So I mean, my client last year was all the way in Philadelphia. Um, so location is not an issue. Of course, just depending on where the people are. I'm open to working with people in house and also just remotely.
Perfect.
Yeah.
I know that you have a worldly approach, and being from South Africa and being an immigrant and an
Yes.
entrepreneur and a woman business owner and all of the things. Can you tell me a little bit about kind of your life, your approach to things, and what your goals are for the future?
Oh, wow. Great questions, Nicole.
Thanks.
So oh my God, where do we start? So I was the little girl that went to school and then came back and had school at home to teach everybody what I learned at school. That's my
Me
entire
too.
that's my entire personality. And I knew very early on that I liked to tear things apart and put them back together again. And once I know a better, faster way of doing something, either help me or get out my way. So being a full-time employee, like for the rest, like a lifer as an employee,
Hmm.
I've always known that may not necessarily be in my cards, right? I'll,
Right.
I'll be an employee until it doesn't work for me. So um, that's childhood wise, right? And then growing up, I had what I call a quote unquote Oprah mom. So personal development has always been a thing in our household. Mom was very progressive. Had a very progressive mother. And she introduced me to Tony Robbins in my teens. Yeah.
Wow.
My first year of boarding school, my mom gave me Tony Robbins's Awakening the Giant Within. I did not read that book when I was a teenager. I probably thumbed through it and went back to being a teenager,
Yeah.
but it did come in very handy in my 20s.
Hmm.
So the idea that we can be more than what we are has been something that I grew up with. And when I decided to land on a profession, I was supposed to go to law school coming out of high school. That did not work out. Thank God. Because wow, I would have been frustrated. Um, but consulting made sense for me because I felt as though if I had an MBA, which I eventually got, I could work with people from different environments, from different backgrounds, because I'm just solving problems. Everybody has problems, right?
Right.
Being a problem solver and being very keen with pattern recognition. Pretty sure it's my ADHD,
Yeah.
but came in handy.
Hmm.
So that pattern recognition piece, just loving solving problems, wanting to always leave people better off than I found them. Those are things that are just very near and dear and have been with me since I was a child. So consulting made sense. Consulting definitely made sense, and I accidentally landed in a more consultative role in corporate, and I was like, oh, okay, this is fated. Okay,
Hmm.
we'll stay on track here. And I'm now blanking out on the rest of your question.
Yeah, so I know it was a long, like, three-parter, so
Yeah.
so no worries there. So can you talk about your immigrant experience being a
Oh,
Black woman business owner and kind of your goals and approach for 2024, 2025, and beyond?
okay, let's do the first part. Immigrant experience. I moved to the US in my early 20s and I was upstate New York. I came to the US as an au pair. So my host mom, hey Gabby. Um just giving people shout outs on this
Yep,
podcast.
love it.
So my host mom and her family are all the way upstate New York. And yeah, coming up as an au pair, the plan was not to stay forever, but I met a boy and we were together for 10 years, married for 8, and then divorce happened. And when divorce happened was also around the same time that I graduated from grad school and then just kind of like started my career, right? So there was this period where everything was just in fast forward and I had a great time, not complaining at all.
Hmm.
Um, and then entrepreneurship is something that is new for me this time around because like I said, I've been in corporate for so long, and deciding to then switch from being an employee to a solopreneur, there was some mindset stuff that I had to work through, you know, because in corporate, I was in house. So the problems were always there and I would just be sent out to where the problem is. Whereas now, as an entrepreneur, I have to go out and get business. And as an ambivert that's very conscious of her social battery, the idea of having to pitch myself over and over again to strangers, very exhausting. So
Hmm.
I did the work that I will do with my clients or myself. The fun part about being a coach is
Hmm.
you start coaching yourself. And I mean, I also have a coach, but I did the work of, figuring out what is it that is important for me to be able to show up for, right? If I decide to spend my time putting on my salesperson hat and doing all the sales work and the biz dev work, okay, can I do it? Absolutely. but what is it taking me away from?
Right.
Right. And the learning curve of me becoming an expert salesperson is going to be high and a little bit wide, but I'm really good at coaching. I'm really good at consulting. So it just made sense to me then to decide, okay, cool, strengths coaching. What are my strengths? These are my strengths. I'm going to have a tough time fighting my opportunities. Why not just bring somebody in?
Right.
And from that perspective, then my model has been, okay, I'll do the coaching. I will get people that are super connectors to then, connect me with leads. And then my business model has a commission base built into it.
Awesome.
And as far as being a black woman and an entrepreneur all in one, it's just an experience so far. I haven't had anything notable happen that either made me feel left out. I mean, I know that I understand the numbers, right? I know what's out there. I know that women businesses tend to be underfunded, and especially women, minority owned women businesses tend to be grossly underfunded. Those are the realities of the world that we live in. But my experience so far has been meeting people like yourself and, forming partnerships with people with all types of backgrounds. I think another thing too is I don't, how do I want to say this? I don't have a reason to not trust the people that I work with or that I'm creating strategic partnerships with, because I've done the work of learning how to trust my intuition. If I meet you and it feels off, I don't care how much you're offering me. It's a no.
Yeah.
So having that level of self-awareness and being able to tune into, okay, does my nervous system feel safe around this person?
Yeah.
So I think that's part of the reason why I've had a positive experience. I knock on wood, right? But to date, I have genuinely met people that are just so open, so loving, so helpful, so willing to create community that is not transactional, but really just relationship based. And I feel fortunate for it. I'm grateful for it. The work that I've had, even my corporate client last year, that was a referral from someone that knew me, and they were like, "Hey, this would be good. This would be great for you." You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I generally appreciate those connections with people. I haven't had a horrible experience, and I'm in no way devaluing or minimizing the stuff that people have experienced out there, right? That has just been my experience. And I am saying that my experience has been what it has been because I have learned to trust my nervous system. If I meet you and my chest gets tight, I'm going to move very slowly
Yeah.
with whatever it is we're trying to do,
Right.
and this is work, personal, either way. That's just how I live my life now. But it took me getting those tools to get there.
Yeah, I think that's beautiful.
Yeah.
And definitely love the experience, and that it's been positive so far. And what I will say is, you definitely do have that, sort of collaborative mindset and working together, and that whole thing. So good vibes beat good vibes. So I
Yay.
will I will say that. So to close out the interview, I just have a couple last questions. I
Sure.
know that you are a big reader and lover of podcasts. For someone who wants more information about some of the stuff that we've talked about, or about personal development, are there any recommendations that you would have for them to start their journey?
Okay, one, my podcast, the Deconstruction Podcast.
Yeah.
It is linked in my links on my website. But for YouTube is such a good free university, because YouTube University is a thing, right? The podcast that I have been consuming, especially in this season, uh, Diary of a CEO and Social Proof with David Shands. Diary of a CEO, it's Chris, I think it's Chris Bartlett. I'm sorry if I mess up your name, Chris. I love that I said that like he's going to hear this.
Yep.
And he is. Yeah. So Diary of a CEO with Chris Bartlett, Social Proof with David Shands, and I feel like there's a third one that I'm missing. Oh, Huberman Labs. Dr. Huberman does a great job of tying neuroscience to just human behavior, and the guests that he has on his podcast are also very insightful. Like I've learned so much. I'm also a geek about behavioral science. So that stuff just lights me up. And honestly, I think it's one of the reasons why I am able to perform at the rate that I do and the way that I do, because I consume this information for fun.
Right.
For me learning about how your nervous system reacts to the thoughts that you're having and the experiences you have, oh my God.
Yeah.
That is like that, and that's something that I bring into my coaching, right? So all this extra learning that I'm doing,
Mm-hmm.
I do it for fun because it fascinates me. But when I'm sitting on a coaching call and I'm able to like sit there and watch your body respond, I'm able to then ask you, hey, what's happening inside? Because I'm seeing your body just react to what's happening, right? So
Yeah.
yeah, I love it. So yeah, those three are my top three that I would recommend. And then as far as so many books, right now I'm finishing The Big Leap by Gay Hendricks. Could be wrong about his last name. Um, and that book has been in my bookshelf for about 3 years. And I finally sat down and started reading it. And it unlocked it unlocked um it unlocked a perspective on the things that we do that hold us back that I hadn't really thought about. So if you find yourself in a repetitive loop of behaviors that are not necessarily helping you and you're like, wait, I swear I was going through the same thing last year, read that book. Read that book. It
Okay.
will help you.
Awesome.
Yeah. Oh, and
And
I think I have it in my bookshelf as well. So if you go into my website, I have my socials are on there and my link tree. So on my link tree, I have a bookshelf,
okay.
and you can just get the books that I talk about.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Well, as that is a perfect lead in for those listening that want to learn more about you, who want to start a consultation to see if they're a good fit.
Yeah.
How do people get a hold of Dee?
So www.novaconsulting is the website. You can definitely go there, and it's Nova Consulting on Instagram as well. So you can do that, and yeah, get in touch with me, DM me, email me. I have a contact form on the website, obviously. You can use that as well.
Perfect.
And just to throw that out there, I'm definitely a huge fan of community. So even if you just want to like book like a coffee, like a virtual coffee, I'm open to that.
I think that's
I'm open
great.
to that. Yeah.
Perfect. So as we close the interview, we've gone over a lot of, your history and your experience and your ethos and all the things. Is there anything else that we haven't covered or that you would like listeners to, make sure that they know about you and Nova Consulting?
Wow.
I'm good with these
I
questions, right?
feel like you should have given me these questions ahead of time. Like, wait a minute. Now I'm going to sit here thinking, do you not know that I hate talking about myself?
But this is one of those things we got to work on, right?
This is true. This is true. This is true. What do I want people to know about Nova Consulting and myself? Also, you ask like double decker questions. Can you like do one at a time?
Sure.
ADHD people.
Right?
Jesus, come on. This is like a whole DNI training right now for you, Nicole.
Okay.
Consider your neurodivergent people. Just give us one question at a time.
Yes, that is true. Okay. So, what do you want people to know about Nova Consulting?
Nova Consulting is obviously a minority woman-owned business, but there is no but. It is what it is. And the core value of the business is to help you be better off than how I met you. Right. That's my core thing with my business. That's how I am as a person. So whether it is a company, whether it's an individual, my services are purely designed to help you be the best version of yourself and give you results that are measurable. And I'm grateful that I had the experience I had in corporate, because I'm walking into entrepreneurship as a coach and consultant, very much results driven, but not at the cost of people's wellness. So yes, you will get results, but we're gonna find a way that still leaves you whole and not necessarily lead you to burnout. That's the last thing we want. So coaching conversations, consulting conversations will include things like wellness.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's important for people to be well, because if you're not well, you can't perform.
Right.
And if you have a business, if you are working on yourself, want to achieve things, you want to be able to perform. So how do we tackle both without sacrificing your wellness?
Perfect.
Yeah.
And last question: what do you want people to know about Dee?
About me?
Yeah. Besides that, she's amazing.
I don't know. I feel like Can I change that question?
Yeah.
So it's here's the reason why. What I want people to know about me. If I were to answer this question, I would give you the most boring answer ever. I'd be like, I'm just chill. Like I'm just chill. Like, okay, cool. The end.
Right.
But someone today asked me, who am I working on becoming?
Hmm.
And it was such a profound question, and it led to such a beautiful conversation. And this was my response. I How long ago was 2019? 5 years
years.
ago?
Oh my God.
I was about to say 3 years.
Right.
Well,
Yeah.
in 2019, I remember at the height of my burnout, I remember sitting on the balcony and just feeling into how I was feeling at that time. And the conversation I had with myself led to the conclusion that I did not want to be stressed 80% of my life and enjoy 20% of it. Like, I would like for that to be the inverse,
Mhm.
because I understand that stress is a natural part of life, right? Stress keeps our brains nimble, but chronic stress is not healthy.
Right.
It doesn't help anyone. You're not productive. You're not happy. You are probably even horrible to other people, right? So I made that decision that I wanted to have the opposite experience. I wanted to experience ease 80% of my life and stress 20%. Felt like a healthy amount to me.
Yeah.
And every day I work towards maintaining that. And I'm so grateful that I've had the experiences, I've had the friendships, I've had the spaces that have allowed me to tap into that and make that a reality for myself. And who I'm becoming is the person that exists in that consistently and then models it for the people around me. I don't want to have to sell you on being happy. Being happy is a choice that we all have to make. And sometimes we have to make it even in our worst moments.
Mhm.
But if I can exist around you and offer you that experience and have you get curious about how you can do it for yourself,
Mhm.
I'm winning.
I love it.
That's what I want to do.
That's amazing.
Thank you.
Perfect. Well, I guess that is the end of the interview. So thank you so much, Dee from Nova Consulting, for taking the time to talk about you and your business and your ethos and consulting and coaching and all the things that you do. Definitely recommend that you reach out. Again, can you give us your contact information one more time?
Absolutely. That is www.novaconsulting. Oh, and consulting is spelled with an X. I forgot to mention that. So it's consulting. You press the S with an X, and it's the same name on socials. So yeah, DMs, hit me up. There's a contact form on the website, and there's a phone number attached to it. I do not call myself, so I did not memorize it.
Mhm.
But it's there if you're a phone call type of person.
Mhm.
And I'm always looking for other entrepreneurs to actually connect with. I honestly think that we're moving into an era where we're going to be doing business very differently from what we're doing today. I'm seeing a lot of clusters of entrepreneurs happen and form
Mhm.
virtually and in person. So yeah, if you have something that you think you'd like to talk about, run by me, absolutely. And yeah, I will bring you into the fold of this cluster that we're building.
Perfect. Sounds beautiful.
Yeah.
Thanks so much, Dee.
Thank you.